Does counting your countries make you cool, or does it make you uncool? That is the topic of today's video. If you're new around here, I'm Rob.
I'm David.
We are a long-term couple. We've been traveling together almost 30 years now. We are currently in the first year of a 4-year sabbatical, traveling the world, kind of giving you an example of what is possible. So today we're going to talk about counting countries and whether or not you may or may want to do it. We've come up with a list of 6 pros and 6 cons. We've had this conversation with many people over the years. I did a little research on the internet just to try and make sure I had the full range of opinions, and we've kind of come up with the 6 most common pros and cons, and we're going to go through those now with you.
Counting is bad.
Yes, counting is bad.
The first reason you might not want to count countries is because you don't want to count countries. There's no reason you have to. If it seems time-consuming or something like that, just don't do it. And that is the number one reason why you might not want to count countries.
It's reasonable. It sounds reasonable. That sound reasonable to you?
Yeah. Number 2 is that you don't want to sound like a bragger. Now, some of these problems I think are optional problems, and this is definitely a problem that is optional. There's kind of a thought amongst people who don't want to count countries that if you count countries, you can't help but to brag about it, and you're using your number as a way of positioning yourself ahead of other people. But here's kind of one of the points I want to make about it, is that counting your countries is a neutral data point. The data point itself is meaningless. It is neutral. It does not mean anything. It only means what you make it mean. So if you make that number mean, if you've been to 50 countries and you make that mean that you are more traveled or better traveled than someone who has been to 49 countries, then yes, that might come across as bragging.
Well, I would never dream of bragging.
But if you talk about it in a way, this is just a neutral point because everybody's different. We all have different experiences. You know, no 2 lists are going to be exactly the same. And so as long as you're just bringing it up as a comparison, it's a starting point of that conversation, then I don't think it's bragging, and I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Bragging wasn't part of the Takeshi Code.
I think there is room for us to be proud of the things that we've done. But if you are proud to the point where you think it's better than what someone else has done, that's very different. So I think this is an optional problem. It just depends on how you think about it and how you want to view your number, whatever it is, compared to other people.
Another reason you might not want to count countries is because it could encourage superficial travel, the kind of travel where you simply travel to the other side of the country to cross a border and then come back to the country you were just in, just so you can tick off that other country as another conquest.
Well, got another one.
Of course, worrying about this is optional. Everyone travels differently. Maybe you like to have a really deep connection to the land you're traveling through. Maybe you don't care so much. Maybe you just like to see the sights or eat the foods. Any way you travel is fine, and counting your countries any way you want is fine.
I think this kind of leads into my next point too, is that there's this idea that if you count countries, then the only possible outcome from that is that your list of countries is now the most important thing you're going to consider when you travel. And that has not been the case with us. Like, yes, I'm a data guy. I like counting my countries. We'll get into that. But it's just a number. And it doesn't mean that because you're counting countries, that has to be the most important consideration when you're making decisions on how you travel. So if you want to travel superficially or deep, that's up to you. The next point is that if you're, again, this list of countries is now the most important thing. It means you can never go back to a country because you're always trying to tick off another thing. We've been counting countries for 30 years. Like I said earlier, we are in the first year of a 4-year sabbatical. Other than a cruise we took from Sydney, Australia to French Polynesia, we went to Tahiti. We hit a whole bunch of islands, and that was all new for us. Every other country we have been to in the last what are we at, like 10 months now, has been a country we've been to before. So a great example of this, and we just did a video on this, is we went back to Vietnam. I had last been in Ho Chi Minh City 22 years ago, and guess what? The city has changed dramatically in those 22 years, and I have changed dramatically in those 22 years. So coming back was a completely new and exciting experience. So saying, oh, you count countries, and so that means you can't go back anywhere, just, it's an optional problem to have. I don't think we have a new country planned until at least January, February of 2024, because we just keep going back to places that we went to a long time ago. We want to go back, we liked it. And so that is a perfectly fine thing for us to do, because our list of countries is not the most important thing as we plan our travels, and it does not have to be for you.
Carol, there's a lot of other things to consider here.
Another problem with counting countries can be that it becomes all about a competition of who has the most countries. And of course, that's not what we want it to be about at all. We want there to be other reasons. And the numbers don't really mean anything.
No.
So someone could have a list of 80 countries, and they worked some job where they just hopped from airport to airport to airport and never really had any meaningful experience in those countries. Whereas someone else may have 3 countries on their list, and it's because they worked in the Peace Corps and they did amazing work in some country somewhere. So the number doesn't really mean who is the best traveler. You don't want to see people using those numbers to claim, oh, I'm the best traveler there is because I have a bigger list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The number itself is meaningless without context.
Context is everything.
So the last argument I want to talk about is one where you will see people on the internet, the travel police, the internet police, who want to say things like, well, real travelers don't count their countries. And they usually have a long list of things that real travelers do and do not do versus, I don't know, fake travelers, tourists, like whatever they want to call the other class of people that aren't real travelers. I just don't subscribe to this argument very well. I think any kind of travel is better than not traveling. And so whether you are doing deep dives into places because you're in the Peace Corps, or whether you have a 2-week vacation and are using it as best as you can, I think any travel is better than not traveling. So I just don't get into this, what real travelers do and what real travelers don't do. So the idea that real travelers don't count countries, I just don't think there's much merit to that conversation unless you're really intent on finding a reason to pat yourself on the back for being a real traveler.
I am so good at this.
I think we have been traveling for 30 years. I would call myself a real traveler. I think counting your countries, like we said before, it is a neutral, meaningless data point that is just there. And we're going to get into our pros here, our 6 reasons why you should count countries, or you might want to count your countries, because there are some fun reasons to do so. And let's get into that now. So what's our number 1 reason?
It's fun.
It is.
We have fun counting our countries. We like to see the number grow. We like to think about where we could go to add to that list. We just enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
It is a fun, you get that data point and it's there to inspire conversation. Like, we have had so many good conversations that started with that question, how many countries have you been? And then you compare, you say, well, I've been to this many and I've been to this many. But the number isn't so much as important as then you keep asking follow-up questions and you get, well, I've been to a country that you haven't. And it's like, tell me everything
about it. Yeah.
I need to know all the things about that place I haven't been yet in case I want to go there. And maybe we've been someplace you haven't been that you have questions about. So many good conversations over dinner or in a hostel or whatever, where how many countries have you been to is kind of that lead-off question, where it's just fun. It's a good conversation.
Yeah. Another thing we love is that it encourages us to visit places we may not have thought about visiting before.
Yeah.
Like we look at a map and we're like, oh my gosh, look at that. Montenegro is right next to Albania and we're going to be there. Why not go give it a try and see what it's like?
Yeah.
And so we get to see, it encourages us to think about
some of those
where
less,
else can we go?
Those
Where else
less
can we go?
popular destinations. You know, instead of just going to Rome, is there something else? When we went on our honeymoon, we went on a Baltic cruise out of Denmark, and we had a couple of, like a week, I think, before the cruise to spend over there, and we went to Latvia and Lithuania. 2 countries that at the time we knew absolutely nothing about, but it was just like, well, those are 2 randomly interesting
We didn't
countries.
specifically go to add the numbers to our list.
No.
But they were places we hadn't been, and we recognized we hadn't been to them.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's go and find out more about those.
I want to go someplace shiny and new.
So another reason I think counting countries can be very useful for a traveler is that having the whole conversation requires some knowledge. You have to know something about geography and history and politics, and kind of figuring out all that information can be very educational, and it can be interesting, kind of figuring it all out as you put your list together. I definitely think it has been a plus for us as we have put together our list and kind of gone through all our rules, because we've just learned stuff while we've done it. And so I think it can be useful if you look at it in that way.
And one of my other favorite things about our own personal lists is that they help us to reflect and remember all of the things that we've done over the years, all the places we've been, all the people we've met. Whenever we add a new country to our list, sometimes we'll go back through the list and start at the beginning and just talk about our time in Taiwan and our time in Puerto Rico and the things we did there and the experiences we had and the foods we ate. And there's just so many memories involved in a list of country names.
Yes.
There's just so much more than just country names.
And I would say those memories are probably the most valuable part of traveling anyway. So anything that gives you that opportunity is kind of worth it.
Yes.
I remember.
If you're enjoying this video, the best way you can support us is by hitting that subscribe button. If you have already subscribed, welcome back. Feel free to hit that like button. Both those things just help our channel out if you would like to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
So obviously, David and I count our countries. We are definitely not neutral in this conversation. We definitely have a point of view that we think it's a good thing. But if you're planning on it, just keep a couple things in mind. Don't use your list for evil. Don't take it too seriously, right? It is a neutral fact that doesn't say anything about the kind of traveler you are. It's just a data point to start a conversation. I am the data nerd. I've got spreadsheets. I count everything. I count our steps. I count our money. I count, we just bought our razors because we cut each other's hair. And I'm counting how many times we're giving haircuts on it so I can calculate the return on investment on the shaver. Like, I'm a nerd. I totally get that. Not everybody's going to be the same as me, but it is a no-brainer for me that of course I'm going to count countries along with everything else that I'm counting. But I believe that you can count things for good, and you just have to decide. You can make your list mean that it is an opportunity to create education and connection with other travelers, or it can be an opportunity to create division and snobbery. It's just up to you of what you decide to make your numbers mean, if anything at all. But I think having that data is just something to play with and have fun with for all the reasons that we listed.
Just thought you might like to know.
So to answer the question, does counting countries make you cool? The answer is no, it doesn't. But on the flip side, not counting countries also doesn't make you cool, because counting countries is a neutral fact. It is just data, and it means nothing beyond what you decide to make it mean. We have enjoyed this conversation, I think, a lot, and continue to do so. So if we have left anything out, or if we have missed a point or misspoke somewhere in here, by all means, leave us a message in the comments below.
You're wrong, man.
I would love to continue the conversation with you. And then going forward, this is going to be the first part of a 3-part series on this. The next 2 videos are going to help you answer the question for you: how many countries have you been to? So part 2 is going to walk you through the choices you need to make in order to make your list of countries, because everybody does it a little bit different. And then part 3 is going to help you come up, again, just walking you through the choices you need to make to know what your minimum requirements are so you know if you've been to the country or not. Again, this is something everybody decides a little bit differently. You just need to make those choices for you. So I think those are going to be pretty fun videos. Keep an eye out for those.
Yep, we put out a new video every Sunday, so come back next Sunday and check out what we're up to.
Experience, right? Shoot. So there's another idea. Oh, crap. And actually, you know, all right, what am I going to say? Wait, were you just making fun of me? Jeez, get no respect. Now where was I?
I think you're at. So, the problem could be that I can't remember the thing that I've re-looked at 20 times in a row. It's only a problem if you think things that are not things that you're thinking, like thought things.
Thought things? Oh my gosh.
Oh, schnizzle.
Thank you, Snoop Dogg. I almost got there and then I
Blew it.
But as far as our original question, does it make you cool? You are cool simply because you are a traveler. As soon as you take your steps into your first country, or really even once you state the intention of getting to your first country, as far as I'm concerned, you're cool.
Today